Hey everybody, this video lesson is going to cover the introductory notes for Unit 5 of the chemical reactions. Now to get us started, let's start with the definition of chemical reactions. A chemical reaction is a process that combines atoms or molecules together to produce a new substance. It's important to note that in a chemical reaction, a new substance is created. The new substance does not have any of the properties of the things that you combine together. The new substance has unique properties all on its own. Another characteristic of chemical reactions is that bonds are broken and reproduced to make new substances. Now let's take, for example, a situation where we're going to make some water. Now everybody knows water's molecule is H2O, but how do you get water out of oxygen and hydrogen? Now you first start with a molecule known as H2. That's how hydrogen comes naturally. It's hydrogen single bonded to another hydrogen. And you in fact have two of those molecules to begin with. And you mix those two hydrogen molecules with one molecule of O2. Now as you remember back in our Lewis dot structure chapter, oxygen is in fact double bonded to other oxygen atoms. And so you have these two unique molecules combined together and reacted to produce two molecules of H2O. If you look carefully, what happened was the hydrogen bonds broke, the oxygen bonds broke, so for a moment in time we had 4 hydrogens and 2 oxygen atoms, and then those atoms rearranged themselves and reformed bonds so that we now had 2 molecules that had oxygen and hydrogen bonded together. So in summary, chemical reactions happen when bonds are broken. In this case, hydrogen and oxygen bonds are broken, and bonds were created to create a new substance. The new substance does not share any of the properties of the two original substances that you used to make that said product. Now before we move forward, I want to talk about some clues that you look for to suggest that a chemical reaction has happened. And the reason that they're clues is that because sometimes you're not sure if a chemical reaction happened or not, but you want to look for one of these 5 clues that may suggest a reaction has happened. Now we're never sure a chemical reaction happens unless we're able to analyze the product and that the product is a brand new substance. But these clues might suggest, and in fact the more clues you observe, the more likely a chemical reaction has happened. Here are the 5 clues. The first is a heat change. Oftentimes chemical reactions give off heat, but some chemical reactions actually absorb heat and result in a cold substance. But a heat change that you wouldn't expect is a clue that a chemical reaction has happened. Another chemical reaction clue is that light is produced. A flash or a flame, you might see light. That doesn't mean that a reaction actually did happen. For example, if you just turn on the lights, it's not a chemical reaction. But light produced when you wouldn't expect it to is a clue that a reaction has happened. The third clue is color change. Now if you mix two chemicals together and you get a color change, it doesn't necessarily convince me that a reaction has happened, but if it's an unexpected color change, then you might think that a reaction happens. For example, if you mix something that's red and something that's blue and it makes something that's purple, it's probably just a mixture. But if you mix something red and it's blue and it turns out to be yellow, then it's probably a chemical reaction. An unexpected color change is a clue. The next clue is a gas produce or a fizzing sound. A lot of times gas is produced when a chemical reaction occurs because those products are in gaseous state. But like boiling water, for example, take liquid water and turn it to water vapor, you're producing a gas. So it's not exactly evidence that a reaction is happening, but it's a clue that a reaction might happen. An unexpected gas product is what you're looking for. Now the last clue is the one that's rarest and most magical of all, and it is when you produce a solid from a chemical reaction. Typically what happens is you mix two liquid or aqueous substances together, and one of the products happens to be a solid that is produced. Now in chemistry terms, this is known as a precipitate. Now precipitation in meteorology refers to snow or water, rain falling from the sky, but in chemistry, a precipitate is a solid that's produced in a chemical reaction. And I'm going to highlight this one because this is a vocabulary term that you're going to want to know about There's definitely a question on the test about the word precipitate and what it means. This next slide is labeled Reaction Anatomy. We're going to talk about the different parts of a chemical reaction when it's written out in simple form. Here's my example chemical reaction. CH4 plus O2 gives you CO2 and H2O. Now the two things on the left side hand of the arrow are called our reactants. Reactants are ingredients that we use to make a chemical reaction. Now you might notice that you also have G after each one of these reactants, and these represent the states of matter that the two reactants are in. And we'll talk about that in a couple slides. Now the next thing you encounter is this arrow pointing to the right, which represents the chemical reaction symbol, or the yield symbol. This particular arrow represents the halfway point of the chemical reaction. Everything to the left are the ingredients, and everything to the right of the arrow represents what is produced when the chemical reaction is finished. Now everything to the right of the arrow are known as the products. And as the name suggests, these are atoms or molecules that are made as the result of a chemical reaction. Now let's talk about those states of matter that are included as part of the chemical reaction. Now the three states of matter that you're familiar with from your previous science classes are solid, liquid, and gas. And in parentheses after each reactant or product, we put the symbol S for solid, L for liquid, or G for gas. Now there's one state of matter that is not actually a state of matter, but more of a condition of the matter, or how the matter presents itself. And that is what is known as aqueous, or in some cases, aqueous. Now the prefix aqua refers to water. And so what this really is a situation where you have either a reactant or a product, specifically an ionic substance, that's dissolved in water. This particular state of matter presents itself frequently in the chemical reactions that we are going to be working with in class. It's an ionic substance which normally exists as a solid, but oftentimes it's easiest to dissolve them in water because it makes the reaction go quicker. The symbolism for aqueous is a little AQ after the substance in parentheses. So these are the four states of matter that you will see when writing out chemical reactions, or whenever you're encountering a chemical reaction. These are what you will interpret.